state of aquatic splendor. Now that sounds like a mouthful. But that's blue economy. So those are your ocean resources. And it says when we use these ocean resources, certain things must happen. First, economic growth. Second, improved livelihoods. There are people living around water bodies that are worse off. That is not blue economy. That's like brown economy. They are worse off. So that's not blue economy. It must improve their livelihoods. So whether it is to enable them go to schools, go to good schools, get medical support, and be as comfortable and have some measure of decency, improved livelihoods, it's a factor. And then, of course, it must create jobs. Jobs. It must create jobs. Employment, so that the people within that area can have a decent means of getting income to sustain their lives. And then, lastly, it must also preserve the health of the ocean ecosystem. So, as you begin to prepare your minds to go into the blue economy, from a real estate standpoint, you must understand what the blue economy actually means and what the 5 key elements represent. So that when you design projects, when you plan projects, when you propose or market or execute projects, all these elements must be there. So if you're building marinas, for instance, because those are the things we should begin to take for granted along our coast. If you're building seaside estates, luxury estates, hotels, which cost so much more to be in, or take, we shouldn't go too far, take the Eco Atlantic, for instance. If you're doing all of this, you must keep in mind whether you're participating as a financier or participating as a transaction advisor or participating as a natural builder. You must keep these things in view. Sustainability, economic growth, which is where you make your money, improving the livelihoods of those within that context, making sure that you're asking yourself, how many jobs are we creating? And then ensuring that matters such as pollution are addressed. We take a look at our water, there's so much that needs to be done in that regard. Plastics in waters everywhere. These things have to be looked at collectively to ensure that we meet the definition of what the blue economy actually represents. I'm going to move on by showing us some facts and figures concerning the blue economy and why it is such an imperative. Globally, the blue economy is worth about $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion globally. Africa has managed, according to the AFDB, to capture about 296 of that economic value. And then Nigeria is positioned as having 10% of that. Understandably, we have a very expanded coast. From Badagry here in Lagos to Bakassi in Cross River or thereabouts, 853 kilometers. These are just conservative estimates to show us the potential. $30 billion. Can the blue economy bring us at least $1 billion? $1 billion is how much in Naira terms? 1.5 trillion? Is it? 1.5 trillion. These are the considerations, these are the things we must have at the back of our minds as we engage in this conversation. And I'm hoping which is going to form one or two of my recommendations that FIABC can begin to take the lead. Not just in advocacy. We are past the stage of advocacy. We are way, way, way behind. I'm talking now about engagement. Reaching out. Reaching out. Yes, we need policies. But don't wait for policies. I remember one of my famous motivational quotes. I used to do a lot of motivational speaking when I first started out some 25 years ago. It says, I couldn't wait for my ship to come in, so I had to swim out to it. I couldn't wait for success to come to me. Yes, that's the exact quotation. I used to use it back then. If you ever read the Achievers Manual that I published back in the day, I couldn't wait for success, so I had to swim out to it. So FIABC, NIESB, that's the mindset you must have. You do have government officials here. I am sure for a state like Lagos, Lagos is the center of excellence. Lagos always leads. There are some policy initiatives. We see that even in the various designations. But there are some policy elements that you are going to have to be the one to prod them to do. That's why it's called private sector-led initiative. 13 years ago, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, because he wanted to deliver packages swiftly, after starting Amazon Prime, which was one-day delivery, was not satisfied with just one-day delivery, he wanted instant delivery. So what did he do? He started test running drones to deliver packages within 30 minutes. That was 13 years ago. So 2002, yeah, 2025, 13 years ago. Sorry, 2012, I beg your pardon. And 60 Minutes had an interview with Jeff Bezos, and he said, look, I've done this. The problem that we have is that the FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, they are so far behind. What you have just test run is confusing them. Think about it. Sometimes it has to be that way. Sometimes it has to be that way. That's why it's called a partnership. Government needs all the partnership it can get from those of us in the private sector. All the partnership. And don't just sit back and wait for policies. You can no longer rely on just advocacy and appeal. You've now got to move into engagement. And when we're talking of engagement, you're saying, for instance, FIABC, we're going to visit the governor of Lagos State. Lagos is a coastal city. We have some leverage. Some of our members are in the cabinet. We are not going there to say, Mr. Governor, as you know, the blue economy is this, that, and the other, and we need to tap into it. The ship has left the shore on that long ago. Kenya is doing far better than we are. We are behind, but we have the mass to actually, once we get it right, overtake any African nation. You're going to say, if you can open up this space for us, PPP arrangement, the final say on occupancy is the governor. The same way we have succeeded in building estates out of nowhere. There are places that are estates today that 10 years ago, if you mentioned it, I still cringe. That you mean there's an estate there. Would I love to live in those places? But when you see the drone view of those estates, when you hear people telling you that they live there, it's a miracle what the real estate sector has been able to accomplish. And we now know from the current rebasing of the GDP, the preliminary submission is that real estate has what? Has overtaken oil and gas in terms of GDP performance. That should tell us that there's something there. We should all be paying attention to it. So you've worked this miracle on the land. We're saying it's time to take your miracle powers to the waters. Is it going to be easy? No. If you have to help the public officials with writing the policy write it. Thankfully, we have enough technology to help shape a lot of these things. With the advent of artificial intelligence, we can quickly on a dashboard see what global best practices are and make the necessary adjustments. So you have to needle them. Absolutely, you have to needle them. Because sometimes the public sector is usually a laggard. Jeff Bezos wanted drone delivery. FAA couldn't catch up with it. I'm told that drone delivery just started in the UK last year or 2 years ago. The private sector has to be very aggressive. And that's why I use the term engagement over just advocacy. Because at the advocacy level, we're talking. At the engagement level, you are putting something on the table. And you are placing a challenge on the table. To say, give us this space. Give us this. Clear this space. If all you can do is open it up with the most minimal infrastructure as your own investment in this partnership, do it. And then we can take it off from there. All right, so the next thing I want us to focus on, I want to show us a picture of some of our maritime assets as a nation to just give us that level of clarity as to what we are sitting on and as to what we actually have in our possession as a nation. So here are some of our maritime assets. 853 kilometers of coastline. We've mentioned that. Those 8 littoral states: Lagos, Ogun State, Ondo State, Delta, Rivers. There is Akwa Ibom, my state. Although I think I'm more of a Lagosian than an Akwa Ibom person because I was born and brought up here, and I'm not sure they've seen me in my state. Over 10 years, 15 years. Even when I worked in Nimasa had an office and projects there. It was those projects I was unfortunately not able to go and participate in. Cross River is also there. Bayelsa is there. We have 8 of these states. So we have what I call the kiss of the Atlantic. And international law says that from the coastline right to 200 nautical miles, everything around the waters, inside the waters, belongs to us. Everything. So everything you can build there in terms of real estate is yours. And by the way, I was talking with my friend Bidomi this morning. I said, look, I have a slightly different view to the concept of real estate than the general one, which is, if we talk about real estate, it means that you own landed property and all that. That for me, real estate is permission to mint something. In this case, to mint money. That's what it is. Now, at the School of Eloquence, we have a license from the NBC to operate a TV channel called the Achievement Channel. And on that license, it says nationwide. What do you think MTN's real estate is? It's not the mass or the masts and what have you. Its real estate is where? The airwaves. That is MTN's real estate. And that's why they say everywhere you go. That's real estate. So we need to begin to look at all of this. And I want to challenge you. So if I have a TV license that says nationwide, that means that my real estate, as far as broadcasting is concerned, is that space. The NBC gave us that license the same way the NCC gave MTN that license. And it's the same way the governors give you what? C of O. Because you know that the land is not permanently yours. Now, I don't know that I'm giving some governors ideas to begin to give water CFOs or blue CFOs here. But anyway, if they use it, they should make sure they pay me because so water itself is real estate. That's what we're saying. Because we're talking economics here. And until we begin to think ocean-centric views, we may not be able to translate our success on land to the sea. So we have 8,500 kilometers of inland waterways. Now, this is very interesting. So when we talk about the blue economy, it's not just what happens along the coast. The coastline is the frontier. That's why I believe very strongly that it is the 8 littoral states that represent the actual frontiers for the blue economy. FIABC find a way to engage with each of these states, understand their needs, do a proper needs analysis as it relates to real estate. That is going to be your linkage. Because what we're trying to do here is simply convergence. How do we bring about a convergence of real estate prowess with blue strength, which is our comparative advantage? When we say blue, we're talking about the waters, and then create an economic outcome that rewards the players, and also do it in a sustainable manner that provides employment and uplifts the livelihood of all parties involved. This is the thinking of the blue economy. So the 8 littoral states are the frontiers, but inside the country, within the country, I call those 20 states, all connected by water, inland waterways network. We call them the blue corridors. 20 states in Nigeria can be linked within through water. And we have 8,500 kilometers of these inland waters. So think about those top two, 853 kilometers coastline, and then 8,500 kilometers in-house. I'm going to spare you most of these others and then show you what I mean. Opportunities of the blue economy. This is our coastline. And there are cities everywhere here. There's Badagry, Ojo. These are all coastal, potentially coastal cities, because that's where we're going to, coastal cities. Look all the way right down to Bakassi. This is what we have for free. Every day we wake up to it. Economic possibilities that will not destroy the environment, that will create more jobs, guarantee more security, because if there's more development along these coastlines, it reduces insecurity. This is where the money is. Of course, I mentioned earlier on about what we have, our inland waters. So, my dear friends, I want to quickly point you to the buckets of blue opportunities. Let me tell you, you think you have made money, You haven't made money. If you're a long-term thinker and you can take or make the first mover's advantage, and of course real estate business is a long-term business, this is where the money is. Every time I travel abroad, I pay more for the hotel room I stay in, as long as that hotel is closer to a water body, than I pay for a regular hotel where normal people like you and I stay. Why? Blue economy. There's always a blue tax. We are enjoying this fresh breeze. I stayed at one hotel in Greece called Kiani Akti 2 years ago when I attended Posidonia, which is the annual event on maritime, on shipping globally. Because the Greeks are the leaders. The Greeks control about 30% of shipping globally. That's why they could manage their major economic crisis. Their economy, their maritime strength, their blue strength was out of this world. Countries like Singapore, all they are doing, they control 25% of maritime labor, seafarers. So imagine what those young boys from ships are repatriating. It gets to a point where nobody is bothering about revenues that government is collecting, but the collective effect, the collective blue effect from blue activity is significantly flowing in. I'm not just talking about trickle down when one person makes $1 million. No, that's trickle down economics. It's risky, it's unpredictable. But when it is a flow and it flows, you know that everything in that hemisphere is going to feel the effect of the current. That's the power of the blue economy. So when we are showing you this rug of water that we are lifting, we are showing you that, let me use a Yoruba expression, Nkombembe. That's what we're telling you. That's what we're telling you. So it's a bucket of blue opportunities. So I'm just going to leave you, before I go into Q&A, by just showing you the 10 buckets of blue economic activities so that you can decide which one you want to fetch from. The 10 buckets. That's why we call this an expanse economy. You don't need to be too sophisticated, having learned special drilling skills to participate. Just look for which bucket is nearest to your capability and begin to show interest. So what are those 10 buckets? At the Blue Economy Academy, I founded the Blue Economy Academy after my time in Limasa. I said to myself, okay, I've had government experience, and it was a fantastic privilege, and I'll always be thankful to my boss, Dr. Jambo, who fought tooth and nail. He fought his way to ensure that I took up that job, up to the point of getting my wife involved. You know, when your wife comes and says to you, why don't you rethink it? It means that even in your house, you can lose elections. I'm telling you. That's what it means. And so I took on that job, and I learned a lot because I actually participated. All the things we did, we came up with a document called From Crude to Blue. I was sharing that with the chairman, with the chairman of Lagos FIAPSI. Sorry, Lagos NIESB earlier on. And so these are the buckets I want to show you at the Blue Economy Academy, which was what I started after I left NIMAS. And look, I don't want this knowledge to go to waste. Let's begin to share knowledge, inspire people, educate people about the blue economy. So there are 10 buckets, and this is where I'll leave it and take questions. Bucket number 1, as you can see, is what we call blue what? Blue commerce, trade, shipping, movements of goods and services. Can you imagine blue commerce? Moving palm oil to Lagos by sea. It will be cheaper. You'll be able to do more volumes. You'll evade, the usual wahalas on the road I will not mention. And then you'll be able to do so much more. Blue commerce. So transportation itself is one. The second one is what we call blue bounty. Blue bounty simply means aquatic life. In terms of fish, shrimps, and the ton of what you can harvest for food. The third one is what we call blue power, sustainable energy. Nigeria still has a lot to do in that regards. Renewables, wind farms, and all the rest that we can get. As we're struggling with our power as a nation, it has to be one of the options that we incorporate into our energy mix as a nation. Then the one that I think concerns you the most is blue cities, coastal infrastructure, coastal estates. I would prefer to live near the ocean and enjoy the breeze, because the breeze is better if you're nearer the ocean. Have you noticed? It's better. Then you have a host of others. You have blue capital. How do we raise money? And FIAPSI, this is going to be very important for you to engage and encourage your financiers to begin to think in terms of what we call blue bonds. Blue bonds. We have a series of programs at the Blue Economy Academy where we go into each of these buckets. It's a course you take for about a month to understand the total dimensions of the blue economy before you begin to get involved. Blue capital, because our finance institutions need to learn these things. We now have green bonds. There are various ways to raise money, raise capital for your projects. But if your players or if your financiers don't have the understanding and what the rules are, they are not going to be able to provide that support meaningfully. Then there's blue governance and justice, and I'm glad we have a government presence here. There is the kind of awareness that is required to function in that space. So lawyers have a place here. If you're a lawyer, I would advise you to begin, if you are serious about the economics of your profession. This is one of the most untapped aspects of the legal profession. I could count the number of maritime lawyers I met during my 3 years at NIMASA. And yet, that was a sector that required so many lawyers in terms of specialization, not to talk about blue governance and justice. Then Blue Nexus is about biotechnology and all of the various intersections of technological applications to drive the blue economy. Then we have Blue Climate. It's very important for those of us who care about the environment. Thankfully, every state now has a Ministry of Environment, and there are actions being taken because we must be stewards, worthy stewards of the environment. As we take resources from it, we must preserve it so that there will be a place to go back to continue and make it sustainable. And then we have Blue Talents. I mentioned the Philippines. 35% of seafarers in the world today, global supply of seafarers, are Filipinos. Pardon? You consent to it. Thank you very much. They are Filipinos. And you know the interesting thing? In maritime, you get paid in dollars. Because maritime is international. So Blue Talent is there, capacity building there, and then finally Blue Ventures, the kinds of businesses we need to set up. Young entrepreneurs need to begin to think, startups in the blue sector, in the blue economy. So these are the things I want us to understand. It is not in my place to educate you. I am the least qualified to educate you when it comes to the specs of your business in real estate. I've only come here to shed light to help project what the trend is as far as this emerging sector is concerned. It's only emergent for us in Nigeria. It is a sector that has taken hold globally. And to challenge us to begin to think about making Nigeria blue. More blue is what we need. More blue so that we will not suffer the blues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. That was another big ocean of knowledge that we have just shared with us today. So we'll take Q&A. Because we don't have so much time, we'll take just 3 people. I know we have more questions, so I'm going to take in the order in which we raise our hands. So I have number 1. Please note that, sir. Do we have any other question in the house? Oh, we are all okay. Are you raising your hand? So number 2, sir.
Okay.
I think that's okay. We are all together. Your name, sir, your family, and your question.
My name is David. Good afternoon, everyone.
You say David?
I represent PIOCCI, the People of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is a global body of 36 million Indians working abroad. And I work the African region. I represent 54 countries from Lagos. Let me tell you, I don't want to have a question. As Professor Ubang said, I use the word professor. You know, most of these things, like, you know what you brought, I just want to add some supplements with your permission. Because I know you're a figure of the day, and you're trying really to make it a tomorrow today. Let me add to it. And I want all of us to, you know, see in practicality some of those things what Professor has mentioned today, which many countries have achieved. The first thing what is started with the villages, towns and cities. If you have time to welcome you to India and come to a state called Tamil Nadu, you know, we built a temple from 7,000 kilometers far from Tamil Nadu called Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And those villages, if you see even today, there are houses which are not less than 6,000 to 8,000 of square feet, the minimum smallest house. Because that shows when you are in the coastal city, you can connect to the whole world. So I just wanted to supplement Professor on this issue, number one.
Thank you.
Number two, he mentioned an inland waterways. Thanks to our current government in India, they are working tirelessly and with safe cost. Not only cost, the headache that we see on Nigerian roads. I just put in one number. For me, India has got a very big coastal, I don't remember the numbers, I think about 5,000 kilometers or so. So earlier, we used to produce something in Kolkata from eastern part of India and you take to western part of India. It will cost you 15 rupees per kilometer with fuel, toll and all the nonsense on the road. Because to tell you, Nigeria is just a pilot of India, what India used to be for 20 years ago. So we've seen all those things. So today, the same thing, you pay 1.5 rupees. You see how the water moves and help us. We're struggling on the road and the quantity. So Professor, that is the second thing that I wanted to supplement.
Good. Thank you.
The third thing what I wanted to add to this gathering here is, let me tell you, yes, it is not a matter of government. Those who are still sleeping and waiting for the government to do, government may not come. Whose government is that? Who is the representative? Who are those gentlemen sitting on the office? Please, go and engage them. He's right. The whole world is waiting, not for a decade. They have done another decade has done. If you don't engage, the delay is yours. Your country is struggling. You are struggling. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. India is one of the leading maritime nations in the world today. We can't maritime and blue economy. We can stay here and go on and on and on. As you can see, I still have like 4-5 slides. But again, that's why you have to come to the Blue Economy Academy, because we sit you down and we take you into it to understand what the dimensions are that we're dealing with. Then you take your own slice, your own bucket, and say, look, 10 buckets. I think this one bucket is enough for one lifetime. Let me now begin to drink from it and drill into it. Oceans of opportunities. In fact, think of the ocean this way, or the blue economy this way. Think in terms of vastness, as vast as the seas are, and think in terms of depth. Vastness and depth. That is what defines the true riches that are available with regards to the blue economy.
Thank you so much, Peter. I want to first of all take a lead from what Ms. Jewish. And you are pretty much about the sound of your country. Yes. The vastness you describe here, the depth, your country has understood it and tapping into it. I will tell you, we also understand it here. Unfortunately, we have a lot of bottlenecks that have made us to stand still and we are not tapping into the resources. And I must tell you that the main source of the strength that we're supposed to receive to tap into the resources is even the major cause of the problem. And that is the government and the bottlenecks we put around. I was privileged to be present the day that the first inland waterway was launched in Nigeria, somewhere in Ngwaland in Aba. That was about almost 20 years ago. I was there. And then everybody that came was talking about how the economy is going to produce an area that has not been tapped into. You have explained here now how if you travel from your country to another country you mentioned, how the developments have sprung up and then dead areas have just come alive. Yes, and that was the target. So what was happening at but the time after that date, the whole thing was standing still. The people who were looking this idea, many of them went bankrupt because of the problems they were having with the government. Everybody in government wanted to come and have a piece of the game and forgot what they were supposed to do. asking for the own, if you don't want to give me part of this whole thing, the whole matter will die. And later, after some years, I was not hearing that, oh, they said the first inland waterway that will launch in somewhere in Kaduna State. One of the ones that was happening in the people that need it most are not even having it. And so, when you talk about the government is, we shouldn't wait for the government, we have to wait for them. Because generally speaking, it's not as if we don't know what we are supposed to do. You are here with packed with knowledge about what we can do, and I'm sure so many of us who, but I've known this. Yes, every day, our eyes are open about the vastness of the economy. And I must tell you, I want you to help us out. How do we navigate ourselves out of this contingency? Not by the greed and greed that we greed of people in Georgia. Or is it that? Is it lack of talent or is it lack of knowledge? We don't understand. But until that thing is unwound, we will not move anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As one who has worked in government, I agree with you. Government is that space. Government all over the world is not just Nigeria. Government is always a laggard. We must understand that all over the world. We can argue the degrees to which this happens or that. For instance, you have in America now, the government wants to create a Department of Government Efficiency because it feels, the current administration feels things are not as efficient as they should be. That's the nature of bureaucracies. That's why I said, that's why I mentioned that quotation, that I could not wait for success. So I swam out to it. Engagement is very important. For instance, one of the things, when we started engaging the state governors, we realized that by going there, telling them, this is what we have on the table that we are about to do, and you might miss out. That was enough to trigger a response. That's why it's a partnership. That's why I said, advocacy will not cut it anymore. We've got to think engagement. There's no government you will go to and put some value on the table and there will not be some level of conversation. Because here's the mindset of those in government, that when you come to them, it's as if you are looking for something. That's the typical mindset. But we now need to reverse that look, we are bringing something. There are 8 neutral states. FIABC cannot engage with all 8 and not get a positive response from at least one. Through its network, its alums, probably there might be a FIABC member, maybe honorary member, that is a governor or a deputy governor or secretary to the governor or an influential person in government or in one party politics or the other. There has got to be. Because what I found is that everyone is connected to everyone. But the question is, are you willing? Are you ready? That's what needs to happen. So engagement will trigger things. It might not be enough of what you want, but that can start the process. I can say that out of experience, that the 1 or 2 private sector people that came, for instance, she's late now, and God bless her soul, bless memory, Lady Margaret Orakusi. Now, if you go to somewhere around Oyigbo, there's a jetty being built there. I don't know the state of that jetty now. During my time in Nimasa, Margaret Orakusi was probably one of the very few persons I could count the stakeholders that didn't come to Nimasa asking for something, looking for a contract or asking for anything. When she came, she was putting on the table, we could see the maritime projects she was doing, and the concern for us was how to not miss out. How to not miss out, we needed to at least find a way to associate with what was going to become a success. She had land cleared, that place was a massive heap of refuse. And she had reclaimed land, she had already cleaned the environment, she was doing that with NIWA and other agencies, and Nimasa had an environmental role to play. I was a special advisor to DG on strategy and communication. It wasn't something it wasn't something I had to struggle with. She had already made a compelling case. This was not somebody coming to take. This was somebody coming to say, look, I've already gone ahead of you guys. It just so happens that I need you to sign off on this or that. This train has already left. We need more of that mindset if we are going to succeed. So success does not come easily. We all have to go out. That's why I said we have to swim out to it. Kogi State is a confluence state. It even makes it a greater, for instance, I mean Kogi as an instance. Visit the governor. If what you have to use to bring him into the fold is giving an honorary membership or whatever it is, and then you're laying it at the table and it's clear. So I can't go into the nitty-gritty, but it's a mindset that we have to adopt because government is slow. We have to get ahead of it. That's one of the things that I learned, and that's why I want to encourage and to say, don't be discouraged. Engage and demand. We have senior government officials. I think the two of them have left. The next conversation should be, all right, this is what we are planning to do. We know you're already doing this and that. There's a point of convergence. Let me give you a typical instance. When we visited the DG of NIMASA, then Dr. Jamo visited the governor of Lagos on the Blue Economy Project, for instance. I was on that team. The governor said, okay, you know what? I could be interested in Blue Talent, which is, what's it called now? Seafarers. Training of seafarers. But we already have a maritime academy in Oron. But we don't mind being, what do you call it now? A mini campus in Lagos. I can provide infrastructure. I can provide whatever it will take. I can provide buildings, whatever it will take. Now, what was missing in that meeting was a FIABC-like party. Let's say a CIPM, Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, because we're talking talent here, that could have just brokered it. Now, what could have happened, or the expectation of governance would have been that maybe someone on the Lagos team, in doing their job, would have made that connection. My governor is ready, NIMASA is ready. How do we create this linkage? But not it was government talking to government. Can you see what's happening? That match did not light. This 4 years down the line. That's why I'm saying we cannot, the stakes are too high for us to leave it totally to them. We must up our game. Because if CIPM has said, oh, we have the database, we are the warehouse of manpower development in Nigeria. All right? So do we need to create an agency? Do we need to create a special purpose vehicle? Whatever it is, that's where private sector would have come to lead it. And that's why I'm saying to FIABC that you are in a unique position right now to spark off these engagements. And one thing I want to encourage you to do is to set up a Blue Economy Committee within your body to focus on this and to begin to take some steps. So there are lots of irons in the fires, but we have not connected the dots, the linkages to spark them into life is what's missing. And the problem is that we are waiting for civil servants who by their default status, is their wheelbarrow-like. You know what a wheelbarrow, you have to lift it and push it. And when we need to do that, we must do it. Because you are investing, your resources are going into this. So it is in your interest to help drive the policy, if policy is what is needed. If policy is the only thing remaining, to help drive it, it is in your interest. So you must find a way to have a seat at the table. That's how this works. Otherwise, we'll keep preaching it as you've continued to say, and nothing will come out. For me, as the founder of the Blue Economy Academy, what I have, NIMASA in 3 years was like my PhD in maritime and blue economy. As a technician, I know how it works. And what we have done at the Blue Economy Academy is to translate that into modules of learning, but in a very functional way. Not academic now. These are the things you can begin to do. calls you can begin to make. Just like you have Lagos Business School. As you're finishing a program in Lagos Business School, you're already seeing results from the network, the connections, and what have you. So most of us have access to governance. How are we using the access? How are we leveraging it to move industries and sectors forward? So I feel you, sir, because I've been there. I know what it's like. But what I also know is that if we want something, we have to get up and move the needle. Otherwise, in 5 years' time, we'll be back here and we're still discussing this. And I hope that FIABC can begin to make the move in engagement terms. And let's begin to see. I want to see the president of FIABC Africa and Nigeria in Bayelsa with the governor. And then a statement that, okay, we are giving you this plot to develop as a test blue city. Then FIABC, your network, your members, with all of the connections, can we do this? Let's see what it will look like. And I can tell you, the governor of Ogun State, once he sees that, he will call Mr. Adele and say, are you not my brother again? What happened? I'm seeing you in Bayelsa. That's how things work in this country. Well, I'm seeing you in Bayelsa. What happened? You are from this state. That will be the next question. I can tell you from my state that if they see me doing this, they will ask, and you are from this state and you have never, they will accuse me as if it is my fault. But the point I'm making is there are things we can do. There are low-hanging fruits. Let's take them first and let the policy and the bureaucracy catch up. They are lagging indicators. They are laggards.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm done. One take.
Yeah, sorry, we just have one more question.
One more? Okay.
Good afternoon.
We have to.
I'm Reverend Dr. David. I'm from New York City. My question to my honorable,
Thank you, sir.
you are very inspiring, your message, and eloquent. My question is, I've been watching and I see the ocean bringing dollar in. Now, luckily, I'm one of the contact persons in New York City when it comes to affairs of Nigeria and Africa. My question to you, my honorable, how can we be in safe haven when it has to do with honest person to deal with in Nigeria? Now, I want to see or hear from the panel, who can we get in touch with when we want to get property here that we won't cultivate in empty barrel, that we pay and we don't get nothing in return. Fortunately, I'm very close to the Black American business people and developers. And I think before COVID, the main Sanwo-Olu came to the US to ask for people of business. And unfortunately that I was there as one of the people that he spoke with. Now I want to see how you can make it that we will have confidence in Nigeria when we're talking of real estate. Because we have big real estate developers that they are interested in Nigeria real estate. I was invited to Nigeria Embassy last year. They urged me to use my influence to bring business people to Nigeria. Where our problem started from is the consulate, where they can't get visa because they contacted visa to a private company. So now, if you can advise me, so I carry the message home that we are safe to do business with Nigeria or Africa particularly, that these are the list of people we can deal with, that we can sleep without open one eye.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Reverend. We appreciate your question. It's always a germane concern because these are investments that we're talking about here. I think you are already in the right space. You're already in the right space. Because when you make plans of the nature that you have indicated, and by the way, New York City is one of the leading blue economy centers in the world. I mean, in terms of what happens between New York and New Jersey, their port and what goes on there. So you've come to the right place in terms of a professional, having access to the right professionals to guide you in that. And so you'll be meeting with the presidents of the two presidents, FIAPSI Africa and Near East. Mr. Dele is here. He's going to work with you. And then, of course, Mr. Opatola is here as well. So here you have both FIAPSI, which is the international body for real estate practice. And then you also have members of the NIESV, that's the Nigerian Institution for Estate Surveyors and Valuers. So you are in good company. So I hope that addresses your concern. Before I leave, I want to reference something I watched 2 weeks ago on television. It was in Enugu State. The governor of Enugu State and the owner of Landmark. Gentlemen, that's a man that understands what is under that blue rug. That's a man that understands the blue economy. I've never met him. I just saw it, and by the time I turned to it, I saw the governor, and what I could hear was Nike Lake Resort, and I saw Landmark. I didn't need to watch it any further. I could establish what was about to happen. And that's also a governor. That's why I said, go to the governor. The governors are the key to the blue economy. Let's be clear. Yes, we will eventually have a national policy. It's taken a while in coming. We had started that some 3 years ago, from NIMASA to the ministry then, and then under the chairmanship of the then vice president. We had a couple of meetings, but then of course, the tenure elapsed or ended, and then here we are. So we will get there. But don't wait for the policy. Write your own policy and start to execute, and then converge. There will be a convergence. But if you wait for the policy, it comes in 10 years. Uninvested resources will go latent. So blue economy will allow you to broaden your mix of portfolio in this business, and you need it. No investor sticks only to a singular line of investment. So here we see a man who encountered a very painful, and let's agree with that, setback. That was actually a thriving blue economy endeavor. Things happen. But here we also see a man who is resilient as the seas, as the waters. Who then says, okay, this has happened. Rather than throw his hands up in the air, blame, whatever, accuse, he locates another playing field, another watery playing field, a blue playing field. Nike Lake Resort in Enugu used to be a very fantastic place. And here we see a man, that's a blue economy, that he decides to move from the coast, because Landmark was on the coast, and decides to say, well, if the coast is giving me stress because of the construction of the Lagos, that's the coastal highway, which in itself, if accomplished, or when accomplished, will actually add significant value. But do not wait. We don't know when it will be accomplished. The man goes from the coast, from the coastal side to the blue corridor. That is how this game is played. How? Sitting down with the governor. The governor did not need to think twice. This man has something on the table. Gentlemen, that's the point we are making. He engaged, he didn't advocate. So I want to encourage us, and I look forward to our continued relationship, because already NIESB, FIAPSI have, even though they've not given my certificate yet, I have it. I can walk in at any time. And I want to assure you, from the School of Eloquence to the Achievement Channel and to the Blue Economy Academy, We will always continue to support you, to work with you. We've got loads of programs and ensure that we drive this together, because this is what will save Nigeria. It's what that will save Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let us continue with the organic round of applause. Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate it.
Who's going to talk with us? Who will lead the discussion? Let me say it that way. As one of us in the industry. So there is nothing you are going to hear today is probably through practical experience, because he has passed through several ladders in this industry. One, he worked as a SA media to the Master DJ, Dr. Jamo. That was his last port of call. And thereafter, before then, he had a school in Lagos, a very thriving school called School of Eloquence and Communication. I'm sure most of you have been hearing of it. That's the owner, the proprietor of School of Eloquence and Communication. His name is Dr. S.N. Ubong. So let's give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you.
His paper or his discussion this morning is very broad, because I know he has navigated well in the industry. And when we were discussing, I told you, listen, I beg, so many things are involved. You have to go through the nitty-gritty. In fact, his paper is 4 papers in 1. So it's going to be holistic. Sir, the people you see here are staff of PR unit of Nigerian Shippers Council. Most of them are in Lagos, some of them are in Kano, Abuja, Bauchi, Port Harcourt. All where they have zonal offices, they have PR people in those offices. So the head of PR assembled them to come and share perspectives, share ideas on how to go forward, which is a normal routine. So we'll now give you the floor to start your conversation with us. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, my brother. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir. Let me start by extending my respect to Head of PR. Madam, thank you for this wonderful initiative. And that's what leadership is about in terms of building the team. So I want to say well done for leading this charge in this regards. And then to all of you, my colleagues in this business of communication, we are communicators, all of us here. That's really the crux of who and what we are. And that's the essence that we represent. The PR function is essentially an element of the entire communication architecture. And I hope that as we engage in these conversations, one of the things that I am looking forward to doing is to engender a paradigm shift. Having had the privilege, having been a private sector person and then I had the privilege to serve in the public space, I'm always excited when I'm asked to come back to join these conversations because of the benefit of both worlds. Yeah. And I have seen from experience, I think August will make it 2 years since I left NIMASA. I've seen from experience that each time I pop into meetings like this and speak, it's always so enlightening, even for me, to think and realize what I could have even done differently when I was in service. So it is my hope that we would at least have that paradigm shift, because without it, we will continue to run the same clock again and again and again. So that's one of the reasons why I opted for us to have a more interactive, engaging decoupling of the subject matter. After this, I will still send you a paper. The paper will reflect what happened here. I will send the paper formally through my colleague here to the team that will put into place a clear picture of things that you can begin to do and to implement. So I'm very thankful for the privilege of joining you here this morning. As I said, I do have a bit of history with the Nigerian Shippers Council, not even a bit of history. It's a rich one, especially during the time of Malam Hassan Bello. I remember that we had about 2 cohorts from the Nigerian Shippers Council come to the School of Eloquence to be trained on public speaking and presentation skills. It was, I would say, an across the agency participation. There were people from finance, people from consumer support, there were people from PR. You were in that program as well. I remember very well. It was a very good program. I remember some of the faces. I remember Monica. Is Monica still in the system? I remember Emeka Ogaba and painfully the late, no, it was in the PR, the late, no, not Patricia. Is it Eunice? And I've forgotten his full name. Oh, yes, Eunice, yes. Yeah, was in training, yes, sadly. So we do have that history of maritime. My life in maritime has been a very interesting one. I never knew that I would eventually work in maritime, but I had always supported so many people in the sector. They would come to the School of Eloquence, then we're in GRE Ikeja. We've moved to Ikoyi now, and we would just work. Little did I know that the sea was calling. And by 2020, when Dr. Jamo became the DG of NIMASA, he practically ambushed me and said, you have to come in and work. And I'm thankful as I look back to him for insisting, because I said no for 5 months, but for insisting. And I'm very grateful for that experience. And sometimes you need people like that in your life, because it gave me a whole new career in the blue economy. So I'm very grateful for that. So today we're going to converge. We're going to converge communication tactics, essentially. Even though you're referred to as the PR unit, we're going to converge communication dynamics into that space in our port community system, where Shippers Council operates as the economic ombudsperson. The amazing thing about the maritime ecosystem is that everybody has got their space. For us back then in the NIMASA, it was all about safety and what have you. But for you, it's pure economics. And so, as we start this conversation to engender a paradigm shift, the first thing I want you to note is that you must see yourselves as communicators, first and foremost. Why am I making this point? The typical tendency when you look at the PR architecture of a number of government agencies and entities, it's a default mode, is that, yes, in terms of the PR function, we are almost always on crisis mode. Have you noticed that? We are either praying that something does not go wrong, and when something goes wrong, a lot of the times it catches us flat-footed. So we are constantly playing catch-up. We are constantly in reactionary mode. So we call the press, put out a press release. We are constantly just sending all of these information out for it to circulate. That's what typically happens. And the maritime space being such a volatile operating environment, because there are just so many players doing so many different things, from security to safety to trade, so much just keeps going on. We're here, a lot is going on. We have no clue what's going on. So our thinking must evolve into a more strategic pattern that envisages, that plays the devil's advocate, that anticipates, that just sits down. Maybe in your office, 2-3 of you can just sit down and just begin to throw up scenarios. Scenario thinking must be part of how you operate. Why? So that when it's time for the actual PR function, because it is a leg in the entire communication system, you'll be able to use PR to service the needs of the publics in a way that it burnishes your reputation, rather than trying to use PR as a tool to solve all forms of crisis that requires communication. So we need to think broadly. Because if we keep relying on that PR mentality, most of what we'll be doing will be clean-up business. How many of you agree with me on that? It's a tendency to always clean up. So first and foremost, the paradigm must shift. You are communicators. And by that, it also means that you are strategists. You must begin to have a very strategic disposition to things. When I worked with my principal, back then the master, I would sit down, sometimes I'll sit down with him at home and tell him, what if as we sit right now, some seafarers are being kidnapped? Right now. We don't know what's happening out there on the ICs. And we said, why are you thinking that? I said, it's my job, it's communication. What we need to anticipate, because these are part of the occupational hazards. What if, as you see it right now, there is a very serious argument or a very serious rift between port operator A and freight forwarder B that had probably been brewing some 3 months ago when the vessel left China with the cargo. Because your business, really, the football in your playing field is cargo. That's the football. In your playing field is cargo. And the players, typically your terminal operators and the shippers. And the enabling law that sets you up says, first and foremost, protect who? Protect the shipper. But you have evolved over time to realize that beyond protecting the shipper, you need to have your hands on the entire economic activities within the port community. Hence the role of a PER, Port Economic Regulator. These things are going on. What we just do not know. And so the thinking, as I said, you must think communication, and then your mindset must be more strategic. It must be communications and strategy, or strategic communication. PR being a leg. We will know when to deploy PR. So what if between terminal operator A and freight forwarder B right now, you know your players, you have your database. By now, the expectation is that you know where the potential challenges could be. You know where the hotspots in that economic space in the port could be. So what if right now this is happening? And it's sounding like an irreconcilable problem. And these entities are powerful in their respective rights to also use the media to put it out there that we are being overcharged by this particular port operator. Charges that do not exist, charges that are opportunistic. So what I'm doing, I'm just scenario painting now. What if that's going on and you didn't get to have a sense of it? Do you have, and this is the question I'm asking you, a playbook for dealing with such a situation from a communications standpoint? We're not talking about the units in charge of consumer protection and what have you. The PR unit must have its own playbook that it has developed strategically by thinking out these scenarios. They may happen, they may also not happen. But we are strategists, we are in the game, in the business of envisaging and anticipating most times the unthinkable happening, and then bracing ourselves in the event that it happens. That's what it means to be proactive. Great communicators have strong proactive behaviors. We have to be proactive. That's part of how we change our paradigm. That's part of how we change the mindset, the approach. We move ourselves out of that space, and the reasoning becomes different. If you are able to make this leap or this transition in disposition, let me tell you what happens. It begins to cascade into, number one, how you operate inter-unit or interdepartmentally. It changes the kind of question or the kind of data or the kind of information request you make of your other departments and units that are on the front lines. Why? Because you're looking at the matter strategically with a view to a certain outcome. And what is that outcome? You want the perception about Shippers Council to be in alignment with the mandate of Shippers Council. Because that is the journey as to how you begin to become a brand, which is what our conversation is all about here. For most government agencies, there is always a potential misalignment between what they stand for and what they are doing and what they represent in the minds of their audience. For most. So it takes a lot of conscious work. So I'm taking you back to first order of business. You are communicators, and so the paradigm must shift. It's bigger than just public relations. Far, far bigger. More so now that the country has adopted the model beyond a Ministry of Transportation to say it is now marine and blue economy. So it is a wide expanse of an entire ecosystem. A wide expanse. At the Blue Economy Academy, which one of the things I started when I left, finished in my service, we're looking at 10 buckets. It's so massive. It's 10 separate areas. There's a lot going on. And you play in about 5 of those, from commerce to regulation, trade, innovation. As an economic regulator within the port system, your role straddles so many of these areas. So we must start first by adjusting the paradigm, the mentality, the approach, the thinking has to be different. Otherwise, we'll constantly keep just sending out press releases, responses, firing emails, calling journalists to do a special interview with our chief executive and all of that. Those things are good, but they are transactional. They are good. They have a place, but they are transactional. That should not be what defines us. We need to change the game by changing our disposition. So we have to look at our role, our function. Because what that designation as Port Economic Regulator gives to you is saying that right up to our tables with regards to this water that we drink, agree that the content of the water might have been procured locally, but the raw material for this container may have likely been imported, or at least some element here, even if it is just the branding. What that is saying to us as the port economic regulator is that your impact doesn't even end in the ports. It ends on our dinner tables. It ends at even the point of purchase and consumption. So how you regulate and how you or how Nigerian Shippers Council regulates and how you as a public relations unit or the communications arm communicates must be in alignment. And so we need to begin to roll back and challenge our current paradigm that puts us into the thinking, the reasoning, and the acting as communicators who are driven essentially by a sense of a strategic outlook. Part of it includes scenario painting. If we do that, it changes our modus operandi within the organization. That for me is the first point, or should I say the first challenge I want to lay down. And I hope that it carries on into your conversation, since this is a retreat, to ask yourselves, in what ways can we challenge how we look at things? And I say this also out of experience. Being able to change that mindset requires, as a communicator, you deal with issues either in anticipation or practically immediately as they arrive. In the media space, there's a newsroom mentality. None of you should be sleeping with your two eyes closed. None of you should be sleeping with your two eyes closed. Because, number one, we're a government agency. Number two, we are there to render services. And number three, in that your ecosystem, or in this our ecosystem, I don't know why I keep using the word here, I'm still part of, this is still my constituency. In this ecosystem of ours, the stakeholders are not pushovers. They are not pushovers. They are not small fries that you can just wish away their issues or just sort of like take your time in dealing with. There could be ramifications. So the paradigm must change. I'm happy for us to engage in very practical, functional terms with ideas. We can open this bit up a bit for some discussion as to what are some of the practical things that we need to do. Remember, our goal is focused on branding. How do we move the Nigerian Shippers Council into a brand? Well, let me read out the topic that was sent to me for discussion, as it gives us an additional sense of perspective. So we said, promoting the Nigerian Shippers Council, Port Economic Regulator, as a brand. As a brand. Using PR, public relations, to manage and safeguard its corporate reputation, addressing and managing crisis while staying ahead of the competition. No wonder I said there are 4 topics. There are 4 topics in one, so we've got to address this as strategically as possible. But for me, as I looked at all of this, it just, in very simple terms, was saying to us as a topic, how Nigerian Shippers Council can build a good name, protect it, and stay ahead. That's what it means. How do we build a good name? We protect that name, and then we stay ahead of the competition, of the various challenges that we're likely to meet and to face. So with that in mind, let me hear from this group. Perspective, current experiences. I'll take 1 or 2. I've made the first point, and that is we need a paradigm shift. Do we agree to a large extent that the model has to adapt. And I say that because I was responsible for an entire PR unit during my 3 years in NIMASA. So it was constantly a bit of a challenge. And one of the things I tried to encourage the team to do was that, look, you cannot go to sleep at 5 p.m. You can't. Because number one, a number of things, and let's level with each other here. Your principal will constantly be under attack, whether you like it or not. For good reasons, for whatever, especially for political reasons. We know that. Because those roles, that's what it comes with the terrain, especially in the maritime sector. It is your responsibility to defend, to protect, because you want the attention on the organization and what it is doing. Number two, the potential volatilities in your modus operandi in the sector, going on at the ports, going on environment of the ports, matters like congestions that we used to deal with back then. Thankfully, Apapa has so improved. I visited Apapa 3 weeks. I couldn't believe that it took me, less than 20 minutes from Ikoyi to get to Apapa. I was pleasantly surprised. So kudos, Shippers Council. I expect that was part of a major stride in terms of your work, because when that congestion was a problem, it was really more of an economic problem it was creating. That's what it was creating. And whose lap does it fall to? Nigeria Shippers Council. Because the port doesn't just end inside the port. The contiguities around the port, the enabling factors for quick evacuation of goods, quick in and out, it's your problem. So you could not have afforded to sleep. And so what should be the nightmare scenario for you now is worrying that it could happen again. So what is in your playbook as a PR unit for that? That's why I said the paradigm has to shift to become much more strategic. What if the build-up begin again? How will you communicate it? How will you deal with it? Of course, management will do its job, but from a public relations standpoint, how will you deal with it? Another point I want to ask you, now that we are enjoying that reprieve, the corridors have become very easy to navigate. How are you leveraging it as gains to strengthen Nigeria Shippers Council as an entity so that it becomes a brand? Because what happens is that there is peace in town. Everybody now goes to sleep. Praise God. That peace is gain. So from a strategic communication standpoint, you should be milking it, addressing it, consolidating on it from a public relations messaging standpoint into gains. But you have got to sit down together as a team and with strategic worldview, ask yourself, how do we do this? Because the window of doing that is what you can actually cash into your brand equity. Because we're talking about how we build this organization into a brand. Everything we do or fail to do as communicators is affecting the brand status, for good or bad. So you can see why I said that the paradigm has to change. It's not just because of handling bad situations. We have to stop doing what I call, or what CNN calls janitorial services. It's CNN that came up with that term, that terminology. Why? During the first tenure of Donald Trump, he would say so many things, and then the White House press unit turned into a PR machine. They were not communicating strategically on issues. So without people like Sarah Sanders, who's now governor in Arkansas, she was always at the forefront. And anytime Trump has gone to say whatever, has done whatever, the next you see her there trying to walk it back. And CNN named it aptly. All right, Sarah Sanders was around to, of course, do some janitorial services. We are not janitors. We are communicators. We need to lift our paradigm seriously, because that will help us shape even what our principal is doing. It will help us shape even his approach. You are responsible for your principal, the executive secretary, chief executive of the organization. You are responsible for him because, like in my time in NIMASA, our policy simply stated that the number one public image maker for the agency was the Director General. I don't know if that's the same in Nigerian Shippers Council. The same. That in every organization, the first public image for the organization is the chief executive. So your evolution must be so strong and robust to a more strategic level that it influences the approach of even your CEO and his immediate team when it comes to putting narratives out there and how they do that. It must be that way. So I'm appealing to you to take an open mind to this and begin to challenge yourselves towards this paradigm shift, to being more communicators and more strategic in your approach, whether the situation is good or bad. Because when you're more strategic, even when it's a bad situation, you can turn it around. Not by papering over the cracks. Not by trying to launder the situation. But by acknowledging, accepting, if it's a crisis, for instance, and then positioning what is being done and how you're restoring confidence back into that particular situation. It's still part of strategic thinking. But if you're still transactional, when there's a crisis, the first thing you do is to put up a wall of defense. As you know, in the port system, it's not only Shippers Council that is there. You know, there are the tractors. You begin to look for various other things and trying to skirt the issue. But if you're strategic, you can own the situation and then turn it around. Taking responsibility, showing that you're even taking responsibility to address it is a plus. It's part of what adds towards your brand evolution and your brand equity. So first order of business is the paradigm shift. If that's the only thing I can successfully implant in this team, to go back and create a stir and engender a debate amongst yourselves, I think it will make a world of a difference in directing the flow of how you conduct business communication-wise. So, with that out of the way, let's explore perspectives. I'm going to open the floor for just a few minutes before I go on to my second point. We're going to take this in phases, in buckets, depending on how much time we are eventually allowed. My style, because I've been a teacher all my life, is typically when they ask me to deliver a paper, I always tell them, he was asking me about the paper. I said, don't worry about the paper. You know that I am the paper. I am the paper. Well, the goal in communication is to address the issue. That's the first goal. Because it's a retreat, that's why I didn't really bother about having a written speech. We will have all that we've discussed. You're going to get it in a clear paper format that strengthens the team. I'm sure by this evening, my team will have something out. I have my camera person doing the filming, so we'll get all of that together, and then we'll have something well structured for you that you can use and develop a playbook, come up with things that can really help the team, galvanize the team, give you that sense of above just PR. We are communicators. So let's deal with this. There's nothing too problematic too negative that we cannot absorb, we cannot handle. And by the way, you're not the one necessarily responsible for the negative developments. Sometimes bad things happen in some sectors. But how we embrace it and how we take responsibility to communicate with the consistency, the rapidity that it requires, shows how proactive we are and gets us back in charge. So let's share some thoughts. We have agreed that the paradigm needs to change. So what are some of the things that you think you'd like to begin to do to shift the paradigm a little bit after this retreat? The floor is open.
Thank you. It's a conversation. How do you go from here? That's what it's telling you. So you can build up your own personal narratives. Where do you go from here and how do you do it?
So let's look at a scenario. I mentioned earlier on, of course, it will not be appropriate to mention specific names. Terminal operator A, for some reason, unknown to you, without reference to Shippers Council, without clearance to the NSC, tweaked its charges, its tariffs. Whereas Freight Forwarder B, who had initiated a large import, let's say, of wet cargo from China a month prior, based on a prior tariff plan. Because once you've arrived, there comes around other typical problems like demurrage and all of the things that are associated with delays, which freight forwarders don't like, or shippers don't like, the shippers end. And then they find themselves in a stalemate. This had happened for over 3 weeks and gradually began to seep into the press because of the status or stature of the two entities. It began to make for news. And the ramification that by the time the product is distilled through pumps or wherever, rather than go for 500 naira, we're looking at 1,500 naira. And Shippers Council is caught in the middle. How would this team handle it?
It's a question put to all of you.
Yes.
Now, let's hold on. Martin, I know you are senior staff. Put this scenario which happened with Shippers Council about 2 or 3 weeks ago. You were all there when they said One, what in One has increased charges. You were all there.
Okay.
You had it. Okay? Now, at that level, what is just a similar thing you're asking me, what would be your response level when you hear that type of thing? And suddenly, one of the freight forwarders came about that what Shippers Council, that just they're wasting time, they don't have any responsibility to do. You had it. It was on press. Now, he's asking you, at that level, what would be your response level? What would you do?
One way to look at it is, how have you been typically, till now, responding to those kinds of situations? And then what needs to change
From there.
Typically, when I remember during my time in governance, typically when a crisis like that happens, okay, all right, we need to go, let's put out something, let's send something to all of our maritime press, whatever. It's not our responsibility, this, just to at least circulate, at least let our voice be heard that we are in the mix. That's what we used to do back then. I don't know if that is also the experience. But so let's look at it from the way we have been doing it and then ask ourselves, can we do it much more strategically, differently, in a way and manner that we benefit more in terms of our name, in terms of our reputation, in terms of the brand. I didn't want to mention names. I have to be out of respect for this.
To help you further. You know, in that respect, like the issue of grad we are trying to discuss.
Yes.
Now, first and foremost, I think when it happened, the head of PR first looked at the story and saw that even Shippers Council gave that approval in 2021. In 2021. And the mischief maker in 2025, from nowhere, came and said, how can they be giving improving rate charges by this year? When the economy is bad, the cargo is not coming in, there are a lot of international this thing, and so why should they do that type of thing? Without knowing that this approval was secured in 2021 and met all parameters on ground. So the head of PR said, do I need to respond this? She now had to go to the regulatory, went to consumer, went to the Met, and saw that the man was not on ground. The person who was blowing the trumpet was not on ground. Okay? And then, to place them, they had to still go into the media world and told them, look at the time we gave the approval, and they met all the metrics to get the approval.
Okay.
And this is a process.
So my question, using this scenario, is to then make the point I made earlier on. You can't afford to sleep. Look, in every space, there are good actors and there are bad actors. As communicators, we are the ones playing in this space. We cannot afford to be logical in terms of our approach, thinking that every other player is logical. No. Being paranoid must form part of how you operate. And there are so many scenarios like this. So, a clear case of a bad actor. But who is taking the hit? Who takes the hit for it? It's your brand that takes the hit for it. That's the issue. It's your brand that takes the hit for it. So what that kind of scenario is telling you is that prepare for more. Prepare for more. We don't even know whether somebody has already posted it as we sit here. We don't even know whether someone has already posted something that then causes us a world of pain. So being intentional in terms of space occupation before they get there has got to be part of the strategy. It's eternal vigilance in today's world where anybody can easily claim that they are a journalist. You have to simulate their role. You have to have people on your team playing that devil's advocate. What if has got to be the question that you ask consistently, tirelessly. What if? That's what we used to do back then. I'll just say, what if they kidnap 6 people and 3 of them are Chinese? This is a year where we are applying to join the IMO and all of that. And what if? And people, in fact, we used to call me crazy back then. Why are you crazy? I said, but that's the nature of the business. That's the way that we are in.
Anticipation.
We must be proactive. And being proactive is simply being strategic. That before the enemy gets there, I'd already gotten there and I have a playbook for it. So I'm not just reacting, but I'm dealing responsibly with the situation. So what that is telling us is that our channels of engagement with our various stakeholders must be very intense, must be very vibrant, must be very consistent, so that in some ways we get to know things. It doesn't mean that you will not concede goals. You can win a match and still concede goals. There will be some things that will slip through the cracks, but I'm just saying, please, being paranoid has got to be part of how you do business. That's the newsroom mentality. Dealing with breaking news. How do you think these CNN and the rest get to the place where the news is breaking? Because they too, they anticipate. What if something happens here? What if a volcano? If you go to CNN now, they'll tell you they have a playbook for dealing with volcanoes. They have a playbook for dealing with various kinds of accidents should they happen. They have a playbook for coverage of being where in a place like America there's what you call gun violence. That's why they can bring those news. They always seem to be on top of their game. There's a playbook for it. It's so intentional. And we're saying that has got to be the mentality and the approach. You want to say something, please? Okay. That's got to be the mentality and the approach. It means that, my dear friends, we've got to encourage ourselves a little bit more to lift off beyond our role as public servants. That's just where I'm going to. Otherwise, we'll constantly be in firefighting mode, even when we are innocent, all because of a few bad actors. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything. Someone wanted to say something
yes,
the other time.
You
still want to say something, please?
I wanted to say we have to be on the lookout. Shouldn't go see things. Our ears should be on the ground.
Absolutely. So let me ask this question. I really meant to ask this particular question of Shippers Council and then the PRT. About 2 months ago, NPA increased its rates by 15%. Of course, justifiably, they justified they are not having done that in over 30 years. And then, given that the port infrastructures are actually deteriorating and there's a need for that. But what was the most dominant outcry in the media? It was the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. They dominated the space. And it was really giving NPA a lot of heat. Because the argument was very simple. What you have just done, NPA, is to make life more costly for Nigerians. And you see, that is a very simple story that sticks. You don't even need a specialist to craft that press release. You don't even need a press release for that. By increasing your rates, it means that everybody along that value chain will also increase. And who bears the cost? By the time you answer the generality of Nigerians, the common man pays for this. But in fairness to them, it was justifiable because they have to, the money has to come from somewhere. Otherwise, there will be no more ports if we continue at this rate. If the system collapses, what happens? The rate we are all complaining about spending more, we will still come back, we will still all have to spend that more. Only God knows under what circumstances. So I'm putting a question to the Nigerian Shippers Council. What was your position in that development? Because one of the things I did as I was preparing for this paper, I was searching, looking for a statement from Shippers Council.
Yes, sir, let me help you.
And there was radio silence.
Let me help you.
Okay. I'm going somewhere with the issue of somebody else.
You know how it happens. Now, you see, we have a problem in this country. The position of MPA is that I'm the landlord and in charge of the ports and nothing has changed. The position of the federal government in terms of trade facilitation, protecting the interests of the shipper and port economic regulation squarely is on Nigerian Shippers Council. Now, the federal government has told MPA severally that once it is issue of charges, Shippers Council must be taking, demonstrate what to do. Without considering that, without listening to Shippers Council, they went and raised the charges. Now, Shippers Council played safe. We don't want this interagency. The next thing you will hear everywhere now, they have their money, they have their strength. They may even go to presidency to malign everybody in Shippers Council. You know them.
Yes.
And you know everybody in that place now. Once you give money, the news changes. Shippers Council went on the ground and wrote them a letter that what you did, if you had passed through us, we could have come together to say, justifying it, because we know after 30 years, there are some instruments that should be there, and we justify from this, when this naira was this, when this cargo was this, when this, and everybody will be taken into consideration, and it will be a flow. But they didn't do that. So the Manufacturers Association came in and fought them,
and they let it
came back to us, and came back to Shippers Council, that look, this, say, okay, don't worry, there's nothing, we will sort it out within the agency level.
Okay, all right. So a very important point that you've made, and you've given us a very full background. But you see, NPA decides to do what it wants to do. I want us to treat these scenarios as just neutral developments in terms of things happen. Our interest is the consequence, the ripple effect. If I am a freight forwarder, I'm blaming Shippers Council. Pure and simple. Because Shippers Council, you are supposed to be looking out for me. I hope you get the point I'm making. I'm just giving you a sense of, because you want to build your brand. Your brand is taking all sorts of hits, and chances are that we don't seem to recognize that these things are depreciating our brand equity. They're just happening. That's the thing about brands. A reputation over time, it just forms. And we think that it happened at that last moment when someone pushed it or tipped it over the precipice. No. So things have been building, and then we just got to that apex. So the point I'm making, you've made a very important point. Shippers Council did take action, but in the final analysis, when you look at it critically, if I am playing in this port economic environment, the summary of what has happened was that I did not see anything. This is where communication is coming in. I did not get anything in terms of a narrative that would have come to me from the port economic regulator on this. And the overall summary was that of silence. Now, you could have worked behind the scenes, but how was that translated? Because we are talking brand and perception now. The issue now is perception amongst your stakeholders. That's where I'm going to with this. Could we have, because as I said, I even had to call a few of my friends in the maritime press. What happened? Why? I mean, Shippers Council was quite silent on this. The question is, do you think with this particular scenario, Shippers Council could have acted differently? Not in terms of NPA did what it did, beyond your control, but what could you have controlled better as a public relations unit, as a communications unit, to ensure that your brand did not suffer for another party's decision within that ecosystem? Could you have done anything differently? Let's talk about it. Like what?
For example, I think after my meeting.
Okay.
After meeting
with the stakeholders. Okay. So we could have gotten that out.
Where all the stakeholders were being invited to the first council. And the NPA came, they explained their position, why they have to increase the tariff, which is 25%. And the NPA man, I was in the meeting, I covered it. He said when he get to his boss in the office, they're going to discuss it with the boss, where a meeting will be held with the chief executive order or the maritime agencies. That was what the man said, the representative of the NPA.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking. What could we have done differently with the benefit of hindsight? Yes.
Like this issue, the NPA, by the time they want to send most of the safe house, they already use innovative, and from when they are selling this, why they want to increase the tariff. And secondly, they've already used some certain examples that okay, these are the things they've already used learning process from other agencies. Why did they increase their own? And they've already built all these things into their claims where this thing must be increased. And because Shippers Council, let me just be neutral here. Because Shippers Council wants to be able to say, you can't do this one to my people. You can't do this one to my people. But when you look at why NPA want to do some certain things, and you know that it is on the right proportion that they want to do it. Because I want to use two things, because two tariffs came out at the same time. That is the NPA tariff and custom tariff. But immediately they go against it, because both of them said it has never been increased for longer period. But the customs own has been it's just like a new one that was want to introduce give to the public. But the NPA have already used some certain innovative, they've already used a learning process before they can be able to say, okay, this is why I want to do this thing. Then we now look at it and now said, okay, if this thing is justifiable, so people are against it, which side are we going to do? It looks like a crisis.
It is a crisis. So the question you should ask yourself, you see, there are a number of things I want us to look at here. Number one is, what is your role in this entire space?
The role is to protect me.
Yes, that's what the law says you should do. Exactly. And so the next question is, to your stakeholders, the people you are playing to, the people you are serving, how do they perceive you? There are two things here. And so your role in this department is essentially to ensure that there is an alignment between your core function, your core mandate, and the perception. That is what gives you your identity or builds your brand. So that is our interest, and that's why no matter what happens within the NSC, Nigerian Shippers Council, when you are part of those conversations, your voice must be strong enough in making it very clear, because most times you get this misalignment. Things get done, eventually, it's almost like saying that, well, majority will have their way, minority will have their say, that kind of stuff. But the ramifications is where I'm going to in all of this. We can't stop NPA if tomorrow they decide they want to increase, or they want to take any other decision that has economic implications. It might not be rate increase. It's true, they are the landlords. You are regulating within their space. That's the truth. You are regulating within their space. Because the work that you're doing is bringing sanity into that space where there is always chaos, potentially chaos, all sorts of chaos, whether it's tariffs or what's it called now, damage to goods or services delays, all of the typical problems that go with the business of logistics and shipping. That economic context is very volatile, just like life is volatile at sea when it comes to maritime safety and security. You are the referee there. You are the referee there. And so, making sure that the perception of you to the stakeholders that matter the most is in alignment, that you are an unbiased umpire. How many of us are football fans here? How many of us watch football here? I don't know if you are. Okay, let's say Arsenal is playing Liverpool, two bitter rivals. You switch on your television, you see both teams. Who is the most important person? Who will be the most important person on that field? It's the referee. You'll be saying that this referee, this same referee, if it's someone that has built, that you have a bad reputation for, that you always lose whenever he referees, you'll be saying, this man again. And controversy. So the audience, the fans, keep one reputation. And invariably it sticks because that opinion spreads, despite the fact that the man may have tried to be as unbiased as possible. That's where we are going to with this, is to let you know that silence is also dangerous. Silence is also dangerous. Engage where necessary. Some things will happen. I'm going to come to you, sir. Some things will happen that you cannot control. We must accept that. We are communicators. That's why we have to be strategic. That is the value of strategy. That we don't have control over certain things that will happen, but we have control as to how we can respond to it and manage how it is perceived. So it's to ask ourselves and go back to the drawing board and say, what if another situation like this will likely present itself anytime soon? It might not be from NPA. It could come from NIMASA, another sister government agency.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Or it could come from even your ministry.
Yes, or terminal operators.
Or even from the House Committee on Marine. Even from truckers. So you see what we're talking about here. So sitting down, maybe doing your meetings every Monday, whether in Lagos, Abuja, these are the kinds of things you must say, okay, so what if somebody, all it takes is for a legislator to get up and just say, I want to move a motion on an issue of urgent national importance. Nigeria Shippers Council, and they just start talking, and then when you watch Channels News at night, you see yourself there, free of charge. You are wondering, when did this happen? Do you have a strategy for those kinds of scenarios? So you must develop a playbook, and I'm encouraging these units to adopt the playbook development strategy that carries a variety of scenarios. What it will do is that it will expand the thinking and the mindset of everyone on this team. Because you are fighting a battle where you have all kinds of actors who in a bid to protect their own interest, hamper you from delivering on your mandate. And by extension, potentially gives you a bad name before your major audiences, in this case, the shipper. So this is part of how I want us to look at it. Please, sir, let me come to you. You wanted to.
Sir, is it not possible for the Shippers Council to tell all the stakeholders before any agency increases their tariff? It's supposed to come to Shippers Council before doing that. The situation whereby they did not do that and then they increase the tariff, can Shippers Council tell the freight forwarders not to comply until the Shippers Council to tell them, so far they are the regulator?
You see, that's a management decision. That's not your headache. Do you get the point I'm making in all of this? That's why I'm saying to you, you are in communications. A lot of the things you are called to manage are things that are beyond your level. In fact, they are things that you did not cause. But they have ramifications in terms of the image and in terms of perception. You don't know, there are some of the decisions might be internally made decisions. There are sometimes that decisions are made internally that are not necessarily, don't play out. They have what you call unforeseen outcomes that affect the image of the organization. Now, you don't have control over those calls. So don't bother yourself with that. What you want to do is that, okay, fallouts. Can we anticipate fallouts? Because I can tell you, even if as management, Shippers Council were to put those measures in place, there are always bad actors in every space. I need us to understand this. If we are going to be effective managers of image and effective communicators, there are always bad actors in every ecosystem. No matter how well structured, how well organized it is, even when there are ramifications, consequences, and penalties, there are always bad actors. They seek to shortchange that system, to stress test that system through various ways that some of us have not even imagined. So when these bad actors strike, the problem is there are usually fallouts. And those fallouts have reputational consequences. They have potential impact on our brand, on our names, on us as an institution. Some of these fallout can end up making us look irresponsible as if we don't know what we are doing.
More like weak.
Or weak. I'm sure sometimes you hear your stakeholders as a reference say that I don't even know what Shippers Council is doing. Question is, communication strategy must be a lot more proactive. A lot more proactive. You must think of all these scenarios. You will never get them 100%, but the more you think about them, the more elastic this unit will become. And so when tension, pressure comes, you know the concept of elasticity, it may stretch you, but you'll be resilient enough to rise to the occasion. So it goes back to the first point that I started out with, that the paradigm, our own paradigm must shift. If we are expecting NPA to do at least be a good sport, be a team player, NPA is in the business of NPA. You get the point I'm making? The same way all other actors, the same way you should be in the business of Shippers Council. Protect the shipper. That is your goal. That is your mandate. So that, ask yourself, do you have, in terms of image perception, if you were to be like a superhero with a cape, would they put Nigeria Shippers Council protector of shippers? Do you have that level of image perception in your sector? Do you have that level of image perception? But that is supposed to be your brand. Protector of the shipper as a port economy regulator. You do that. The functional side is port economy regulation. But the perceptional side should be, I use the word should be, protector of the shipper and by extension protector of the Nigerian economy. That's your brand destination. That's your brand destination. But the question is, what is your current brand situation? Your brand destination is that you are the rescuer. It should be a case of Shippers Council to the rescue. Nigeria Shippers Council to the rescue. That's your brand destination. So there are two things we are looking at here. But your brand situation, we see that there's a gap. And we must constantly be working with this mindset. Are we protecting the shipper? Whatever happens, whatever comes out of this meeting with all of these people, whatever comes out of this, when the smoke clears after this tariff increase or whatever MP has done, will Shippers Council still be seen after all of it as they did everything to protect the shipper? And we saw it. And that's one more feather in Shippers Council heart into becoming that brand. That's why I said silence is dangerous. Because when you're silent, a feather is taken off your cap. When you're silent, in fact, in communications context, silence is often interpreted as complicity. I'm telling you, perception-wise, maybe they did this to us. You people did not say anything. What is that saying? What is that telling you? That they are part of it. So you must fight for your reputation intentionally. And that's another point I want to make. Intentionality is very crucial in all of this. Regardless, yes, your sister agencies, fine. Working for the same government, that's true. But you have clearly delineated sets of functions. So the goal for you would be, in all of these, okay, NPA, this is what you've done. We have a responsibility to ensure that our audience, in this case the Nigerian shipper, perceives us as working in their own interest and protecting them. So this is the narrative that we intend to put out there on a consistent basis with ample evidence so that they get the sense that we're doing what we need to do. So that is the PR function. Elevate what your management does through the power of narratives. See, there are ways. Let me quickly give you, I'm going to just give some suggestions to you. There are ways the PR needs to function in an unconventional manner. Sometimes, to ensure that you're building that trust, even in the midst of a lot of difficulties. And thankfully, head of PR is here. These are suggestions. They are not conventional, but they help in some ways. There are some meetings that you can intentionally embed is one or two stakeholders, even though the meetings or the functions were not for them. It's a PR move. It's not a management move. It's talking to management. This, we know this, but you know what? I think it's a good idea. Because one, you then convert some of those stakeholders as into your megaphone. To build your brand is not something you're going to do all by yourself. And it's not by our logos, the various things we print and adverts. And no, it's by organic human interactions, responses, and dealing with situations. Sometimes your story or your position can be better told because there were one or two stakeholders or shippers who were brought into a situation they would ordinarily not have been privileged to be in. But through the power of a strong PR unit, you're able to say, look, please, let's bring in someone, let's have at least one of the freight forwarders attend this meeting with NP or whatever it is you're trying to do. What it does is that it brings collective participation. You're not trying to build the brand all by yourself. The beneficiaries of your function are also playing a part in it. So it's got to be some unconventional thinking would have to come in. Please, sir, you wanted to say something. Sorry.
No, I wanted to ask you to situate a situation. One, when you know, let's look at a little history about Nigerian Shippers Council. It was started in 1978. UNCTAD said, please, nations, go and start Shippers Council so that I can protect the interest of the shippers. And when it was started, they did their job diligently. Now, it was a military decision. In 2014, during the time with Jonathan, Shippers Council was made the Port Economic Regulator by executive order.
Yes.
Now, look at the scenario I want you to look at. There's one they call Stuart, Ship Owners Association.
Yes.
There was an infraction they did. Shippers Council went and said, no, you can't do this without having recourse to us. We dialogue over it. The next thing they did was to go to court, right? And the thing, I think up to now, it's still in Supreme Court. Just say you don't have that, right? Because you were not here. 2014 executive order is not.
It's not a law.
It's not a law. It was
an executive order.
This thing Jonathan did without passing through the parliament. Now, again, I want you to look at the scenario where we are going into now. God willing, in the next few months, the Nigerian Shippers Council, the president, the act of parliament, approved by the parliament, sent to the presidency for assent. If the president assents it, now this is the first time ever Shippers Council will have authority to start
to enforce.
If this law is passed, nobody can challenge it in the Supreme Court or any court of law that you are acting on your own, because it has passed through the act of parliament. Now, the scenario I want you to see is that, you see, some of the time, the public relations unit, there are some issues that will come up. They will look back where they are coming from, look back at the law, establish them at any point in time. And that is what happened when Nigeria Post Authority increased that time.
Yes.
He said she
Yes, because
knew that
yes.
even MPA will go ahead
Yes.
and tell these people you think they are having this, don't have authority.
Yes.
Who get the authority to be public or regulator without passing through that system? So these are some of the issues the public, when they want to stand and react, does that with that's hindrance. But again, I want to look at
the
now
scenario.
We are looking at Imperial Bill to be passed in the next few weeks. Where do you think the public relations unit will now navigate to?
Okay, thank you very much. You raised a very important scenario. I also was aware of that scenario. I'm just being careful. I didn't want to raise it in our conversation because it can be sensitive at times. We know it's really more of an executive tool that Shippers Council has had to rely on. And then this matter, I think the issue is, I think it has come, that particular court case, I think there was a soft pedaling at some point.
Exactly, yes.
Because I think Shippers Council won the case at the, and even at the one at Shippers Council also won at the appeal court as well.
Yes.
So I think at some point there was soft pedaling and all that. So these are some of the nuances that a communications team must manage. So here is what I'm looking at now as we anticipate the future. But then let me also put this out there. Think about it with regards to the strategic question I asked earlier on. What if that law does not get passed? What if?
We're Nigeria.
I'm asking you. What if? What if? This is how you must think. As strategists and as communicators, that's what strategic communication is about. What if it's not passed? Could it be possible that there are people lobbying for every legislation? There are those lobbying for and against. What happens if you're putting all your eggs in that basket? That is scenario one. I just want your mind to think that way. That's why I threw in that question. That's the only way you stretch yourself and think out of the box, become innovative in doing your jobs differently beyond giving out press releases and responding because something has happened. What playbook do you have for another 4 years of remaining Port Economic Regulator by executive fiat? So you know, that's why I mentioned earlier on that you know that the players in your ecosystem are big fishes. They know their onions. They can create pain. They have the means to play in the press, to use the media and whatever it is to cause you a world of pain. So how prepared is the PR unit to engage, to be a step ahead? You must know your problem customers in this ecosystem. From terminal operators to freight forwarders, who are your you must have a list for them that this party was there. Potential, don't be surprised if something is in the media in 3 days' time. So you beat them to it by leading a conversation on tariffs. You see, when you lead a conversation on tariffs, if the intention was tariff-centric, what it does is that you are setting the agenda. But if you then wait, they strike, we all start running helter-skelter. Isn't that what we do? We start running helter-skelter. So I'm just saying that in response to your question, I'm not going to give like a very direct answer to say do this or that. But I'm going to come back to challenging the thinking. When you have the thinking, you will give yourself options. If the law is passed, it strengthens you. But again, the law could be passed and execution, which is not your responsibility. Remember, you don't have any managerial execution function here. You're dealing with communication. If the management does not execute things in a manner that strengthens you, how do you handle it? Communication-wise. We are managers of outcomes here. Let's be clear. That's why, with reference to his question, what can Shepherds Council do? I said, no, let's bring our minds to. Our problems can be created from within, in as much as most of them are coming from without. That's the truth about it. So we have to stand ready to manage the reputational side, the communication side, and part of it is being proactive about it. So part of being proactive is not to overhype the issue. In case, what if it doesn't get passed? How does it leave us? Where does it leave us? So we are not driving at the political side of getting the law passed, but we should remain focused on what should be the function. Look, Ghana has a Shepherds Council, and it's functioning quite well.
And it was modeled from Nigerian.
Absolutely. So clearly we are behind the curve. So my point to you is to continue to drive the kind of narratives that puts you in that role, with or pending the arrival of the law. There are times when people do things and the perception is higher. I'll give you a typical example. There are people that come into the organization, they work so hard, they put in their best, they do so well, they become so well known, and then you ask, in the minds of people, it's as if they've been there for 5 years, whereas they've only spent 1 year. Can you see that the perception is way higher? That's their brand perception is way higher than the actual fact on ground. So I'm saying that you have to drive the narratives. What are all those your wins in the areas of successful arbitration and resolution of port economic matters must be front and center. So I'll give you an instance. I went on your Instagram page. I was there 1 a.m. this morning. I just curiosity. So let me go to Shepherds Council. Let me just check. Because the world, so much is going on. And I checked from beginning to the end. I did not see a port economic regulatory, your port economic regulatory victories. And I'm sure there's a lot you have done. I did not see. What I saw, and I'm saying this as one who has worked in the same space, and looking back at the lessons, because they say hindsight is 20/20. That there are things, adjustments we can begin to make. Yes, because it's a government space, first order of business has to be that we project the set man, the chief executive, give him airtime, give him prominence and all that, because the standard perception or reasoning in the political ecosystem is that if he's seen or she's seen, work is going on. Create that bandwidth, designate it, and take that box. But the crux of the function of the media team, the communication arm of the agency, is to drive the narrative based on the mandate it was set up and hand the value outcome, because that is what builds the reputation of Shepherds Council. So I checked, I was just checking, I thought I was going to see some freight forwarders, not just in interactive sessions, real narrative. You need to convert those wins into narratives that people can understand and relate with. I watched the last episode of the program Shippers. I saw that you had a segment for complaints. What's it called that you resolve? That segment lasted for just 35 seconds. There are things we can begin to do. Show faces, show scenarios, make it more real, so that the concepts and the value of a port economic regulator in terms of the outcome, how it transmits or translates into economic benefits, Those are the real narratives that stick. Create space for chief executive visits, people courtesy visit and all of those things and all that happen because the government space, many people come in, every day is always busy. But part of this team must be looking for your wins and materializing the narrative in a way that is clear and easy to appreciate and ensure that they occupy media space. I just took your Instagram page. I went through everything from beginning to the end. Everything. I saw events. I saw a lot of the staff maybe speaking at one event. I saw all of those. All of those things are good, but they are activity. You now need what I call productivity-oriented narratives. What that will do is that it has its own way of contributing towards your brand destination. Because, put it simply, Nigeria Shippers Council is the rescuer of the shipper. That's all. You are it's very simple. In fact, the mantra should be Nigeria Shippers Council to the rescue. Like a Superman wearing his cape. That's what you are. And that's how you build your brand. What is a brand, by the way? Brand. Marketing 101 is simply a promise. That's all. Your brand is the promise that you are making, that you've communicated, and that you are committed to delivering upon. And as you deliver on it, you communicate it. And that strengthens your reputation. And over time, that's your brand. That's what it is. So we must manage this situation to ensure that there is a proper functional alignment between what we are delivering and how we are being perceived. So what ways do you think we can translate some of our wins into natural narratives that can be out there? And if you do that, I can tell you your Instagram page will probably more than double, because those will be real scenarios that people can engage with. Because as Hassan Bello used to say in those days, that we are all shippers. Once you put something in an envelope or whatever it is, you order something that it comes to you. Everybody is a shipper in one way or the other. So what ways do you think we can do that? How many of you have been to your Instagram page here in recent times? Someone is smiling there. That means she hasn't been there. You have. Okay, show of hands. How many of you have been to your Instagram page? Let's count. Let's take a census. Head of PR, so at least get to see your team and see what's going on. Okay, so let's say out of, maybe let's say 30% or 40% of the group. How many of you have watched your TV program on YouTube? So how many of you have tracked the nature? Am I wrong with what I just said about your Instagram page? So I saw. So in what ways do you think we can? Because you're the ones on this job. I can't really picture in full concrete sense all the issues you address. For instance, you said we had 6 complaints. One of them had to do with demurrage. Another one had to, what does it mean? I get the point. It doesn't stick. The point I'm making is that what does it mean? It's just like data, some information. But could you translate that into much more concrete narratives, storytelling? That particular segment, if you can reimagine it and make it weekly, it's a good start. It's at least another component that helps your brand, because it's appealing to your ecosystem, those that need to know. Yes, please.
So I think we should
should just do like a turnaround, concentrate more on that because that's the stakeholders we're dealing with. Then I think the other activities you can now make them like more of tidbits. Okay, the ES executive visited these places. They will now tell that less time and then concentrate more on that instead of giving the personality story of the ES. I think the stakeholders' interactions should be more like our focus.
Absolutely.
Because they are the ones that will now sell us out.
Absolutely.
They will sell us out. They are the ones that will interact more and say, we're able to deal with this. So if they are able to deal with this, that means I can take my complaint. If they are able to settle out these people, that means I too can. So it shouldn't be just that tidbit small session. It should be more time should be dedicated to it. I think, so let me just give you this story we had in Kaduna. There was this black eye beans issues that we had from Kaduna to Dubai. You understand? It was a lengthy negotiation. But the good thing about it, even though it wasn't given prominence, is that at the end of the day, they was able to reach a compromise that Shippers Council stepped in, and then they was able to negotiate it. So for me, that was like a victory.
Yes.
You understand that if we sell it out, people will know that yes, okay, we are working. If they can sort out this, they can sort out other.
Absolutely.
Just more time for this.
Your wins.
Yes.
Put out your wins out there.
And have more confidence in you.
Yes.
The more wins you put out there, the more it strengthens your brand. Nigerian Shippers Council. This is a council designed, put in place by law to protect the shipper. And it does that through regulating economic activities within the port system. That could work, and it's something that you should figure out a way to put across. Yes, please. Please.
There was a time in one of our TV programs that we had a stakeholder whose issue was resolved at the complaints unit. And given his remarks, he said, when you have an issue come to Shippers Council, they will always be there to help you. You're even praising Shippers Council for not collecting the dams. So I remember that week after the program was aired, because we used it in Article 70. After the program was aired, the ADPR, that's our head, brought it to our knowledge that I don't know if it is a TV station that was saying that it's an advert, and that's an advert. So we'll have.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
How dare they? You've paid for your airtime. There's no way. How dare they? It's not even done.
Okay. We have to obtain a certificate for advertisement before we put anything like advertising.
Okay, is it from APCON and all that? Okay, it's not as if, well, maybe APCON has evolved, but I don't think, well, I did quite a couple of those during my time in Nimasa, and then nobody, yes, you paid for your airtime, but you can do whatever you have to do.
On the narratives, because some of the statements can be advertising statement.
No, if it's a testimonial,
it's supposed to be a testimonial. But the argument that was saying, come to Nigerian Shippers Council, come and work. So it's the narrative that you are.
Well, the beauty of it is that if that is a challenge, I don't think it's too much of a big deal. If it's an advert, I mean, you can on your own recognizance get APCON to give you that approval. Those things don't cost much, maybe 35,000 or whatever. I'm surprised, maybe these are new things, because during my time, we used to do quite a lot. We were creating promos. I was writing art scripts to promote quite a number of things for Nimasa then internally, and it never came up. So I would think maybe it's a recent
we're not supposed to collect anything from the program, like money. But they feel that if you future somebody like that, it means you are collecting something from people.
Yeah, unfortunately, which is but whereas what you're doing is you're promoting.
On Apple. The percentage that you are collecting.
Yes, that's the thinking. Maybe that's because I think there's a drive for revenue, and so they're really recreating or redefining a lot of these things. But then, of course, if that is now the rule, because they do have a say in terms of regulating that space, I don't think it's anything too significant. But the key thing is, let's just push out our narrative. Now, in terms of the content, it's important, provide adequate bandwidth for the chief executive that covers his activities. And at the same time, tell your stories more. And because those stories will help define, since that is our interest here, it's to help define and shape the brand, shape Shippers Council from being an entity into having an identity. Because right now we're essentially an entity of government, an agency of government, but the goal is to evolve into one with an identity. In other words, we identify with shippers. Shippers identify with us across the strata. And in today's world where there's so much e-commerce going on, I think that Shippers Council can actually mainstream the value of the fact that we're all shippers. I know Isaac Bello used to say that a lot. I thought that was one way I got to appreciate Shippers Council. That you can be the one, in fact, it's your responsibility by law to mainstream the concept that we're all shippers. Everybody is affected by what Shippers Council does economically. So everyone should have an interest in what we are doing and therefore help in building that into a brand. So the concept of shipping and all its values, which of course goes beyond waters anyway, should be you owning that space as a brand in the hearts and minds of Nigerians. That is when we actually arrive at that brand destination. But the thinking within this current situation must be such that it's more strategic and our effort is driven by this sort of ideas. And so every time we're going out there, before something happens, if it catches us off guard, our response goes beyond the original, typical, stereotypical way of, let's do it this way. We can turn it around. We can turn it into a story. It's not too late to tell your own narrative of the MPA episode. In fact, now that everything has cooled, this could be a time where there is mental space and bandwidth, where you could then come out and drive a narrative of yours that can stick with people. And then keep in mind that because the world has become so discontinuous, you are an organization of government, an agency of government that is built to function as an incumbent. You know how the concept of incumbency, which is very traditional and which is, you can predict, so to speak, because you're comfortable, you're in charge, you determine things. But you must now begin to think with some sense of insurgency. Why does insurgency last? Why is it such a challenge militarily? It's because traditional armies fight based on traditional principles. Insurgents don't have any rules. They redraw the map. They take the battles to places which is non-conventional. They pop up here and there. So you need, and I'm going to, head of here, I'm going to appeal to you, ma, to encourage a little bit of insurgent thinking, not in the sense of irreverence, but thinking out of the box to do some things. With social media, and you have a TV program, a TV platform, you can reimagine the TV program. When I got to the master, one of the things I tried to do was, so why can't I have interviews on a boat? My first set of interviews were on our vessels. I realized that a lot of people in the master had hardly gone out to the waters. There were so many things I imagined, just that my schedule, my plate was so full. I thought of ideas where if people come to visit us, they should live with fresh fish. Because it's maritime. Do you know the PR that will do? That what we are giving our guests is fresh fish, picked out of maybe somewhere in or what have you. It's just, we are giving you the maritime experience. You see, let me tell you, that will make news faster. That will trend more on social media. Quicker. We have to think out of the box. Why? That is solidifying your brand, giving the right picture. Oh, these are shippers. So everybody is into shipping. Those are the kinds of stories. Sometimes we used to think that, are you crazy? What? I said, look, you need a bit of this insurgent thinking, because this is a government establishment. The space is pretty much established in nature. But if you're going to break out a little bit, you need some doses of this once in a while. So it's to really challenge that thing. And I think that's, for me, is the major argument I bring to you today. To say, as public relations people, we must be very strategic. We must shift the paradigm. Because aren't you tired of people just ambushing you every now and then over issues, especially bad actors? Sometimes it could be somebody who decides maybe they wrote a proposal and the means was not there to satisfy them. And the next thing, some news is flying around and you have to do cleanup. So it's time to get ahead of the game. That's the point I'm making to all of us. To think creatively as well. And within the structural accommodation of an agency of government such as ours, we can make some good creative progress. So I want to begin to wrap up. Do I still have more time? Okay, good. So, by now coming into some of the skills that each person, everyone around this table needs to have, we must also develop ourselves. We must develop ourselves, and very intentionally. Now, number one, I think I had my notes, just a second here. So I'm going to read through some of these skill sets that are necessary. Excuse me. So we've agreed and we've made the point that a brand is a promise. And for you, your promise to the shipper is that we will protect you. We will always have your back. And exactly. We are like the Superman in our cape, NSC at the back of it, coming to the rescue. So if you're being bullied by a terminal operator or what have you, and then, or for some reason you're delayed, and then your shipment defaulted into demurrage, and all of those things are piling, and it's about to sink your business. Shippers Council is that knight in shining armor that swoops in and says, no, I'm the defender of this universe, so to speak. And the shipper knows that they've got our back. So that is incentive for them to keep on driving their business. Because the more they ship, the more there's cargo accruals. And we know the ramifications of more cargo, even to us as a nation, in the International Maritime Organization. It's part of what counts against us when we go to IMO. We're talking about category C and all of these things. They look at those metrics. So your role is so important, such that if people now leave our port environment to use other ports, that's a loss for us. So Shippers Council must rise to that occasion, and we must communicate these winning narratives. So in terms of the kind of skill sets that I want to encourage us to develop, number one is strategic thinking. So let me explain. Strategic thinking at the personal level is instinct to just question. It's the essential element in every good journalist. I mean, the way we're taught journalism, you use your 6, 7 servants. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. The 6, 7 servants, 6 of them. Let's develop strategic thinking skills at the personal levels, and it starts by just questioning, what if? What if? You can do this privately, personally, nurture it on your own till it becomes a skill. You'll be amazed at how it serves you. Number 2, the ability to read and absorb expansively. Let me ask, in the last 2 weeks, how many of us have read or are reading any book? Just a book. Let me see. How many hands up? All right, what are you reading? Tell me, sir. Tell me, what are you reading? What's the title of the book?
The Tracy System Leader.
The what?
The Tracy System Leader.
The Tracy
leadership.
Okay, the Tracy, that's John C. Maxwell. Okay. What about you now? Somebody is Purpose-driven life. That's Rick Warren. Rick Warren. Okay. Anyone else? Oh, Atomic Habits. I forgot the guy's name now. It's a self-help reference. It's a very popular one in recent times. So what I'm saying is, please, you don't need to be an exhaustive, fantastic reader. Just, even if it's just 2 pages every day, the quality of your self-development is going to rub off on the quality of your production at work. There's no magic to it. And one way to ensure that is to start by reading. It could be anything. It could be a maritime themed material. It could be something that is business related. It could be a motivational reference, whatever it is. Develop it, because what it does is that it expands the mind. You see, the best communicators are those with expansive dispositions, because they can relate, they can sit in any scenario mentally. And so if they are to drive communication narratives with a pen and paper without thinking, they can either craft a script or do a memo or do a press release and set the direction, the news peg, the direction of how we want this to be done. So please make out time, read, because the exercise value for the mind is very significant. And we are the thinkers for the organization. Let's understand that we are the thinkers for the organization. There are things that my principal will want to do, and I tell him, you can't do it. I tell him, I'm sorry. You will do it, but not that. That was the way I work. And maybe because I had enough of that latitude, because I was practically railroaded, and we were very close. And I'll tell him, I said, because I'm not ready to spend the next 1 week trying to beat back or manage the fallout. And it's going to distract you. You still have this and that and the other. That was the level of leverage that I have. I know it's not the same for everyone. I understand that. But it's our function. I understood that was my responsibility as well. And I said, okay, if you're going to do it, or let's put it this way. Let's tweak the headline a little bit. Just to let us lead it before it happens. That's what that strategic ability gives you before it happens. Number 3, your writing skills. It's so important.
Listen, please, like what the second one you're talking about,
Yes.
read.
Yes.
You see, there is, in our school of journalism, they will always tell you, for you to be a very good journalist, you must go and read other disciplines.
Yeah.
Because you may see a lawyer and you have not read anything about law. You don't know much about law. You can't ask me a question. And if you ask him a basic question, he will now navigate and go to a higher pedestal that you not even be understanding what he's saying. That is why the emphasis is that you go on, read the trade laws. The trade laws are, you read international shipping laws. All these things will help you so that at any point in time, there's a crisis, you will know how to navigate and you know how to respond immediately.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And that is so profound. In fact, it should be taken for granted that should be induction level material, so to speak, at its most fundamental, because you have to communicate, you have to ensure that the words or the message is out there. Then the third one has to do with writing skills. Well, I'm going to say this, we all have to continue to develop in this area as much as possible. But you can't write well if the first two areas have not been developed. Because you'll end up writing for formality. You are writing to get a particular line of messaging across. And to strengthen your writing, your vocabulary must be strong. Again, how do you get strong vocabulary? By reading. By reading and utilizing keywords. In your industry, for example, your registers are very important. How you use them. The question that I would love to ask is, it's so easy to say, okay, those people, those of us in PR, we are not the core shipping professionals. That's not true. That should not be an excuse. You must know everything. When I joined NIMASA, I had to read up on these things they call Incoterms. I had to read up. I was reading, my case was a problematic one. Why? I was yanked from the School of Eloquence and engrafted into the highest level as an advisor on strategy and communication. So I had to rely on my consulting background to draft the strategy for my friend who was the DG then. And I actually did it when I was outside because I said, I can help, but I'm not coming in. But when they drafted me in, goodness me, after my first week, I said, well, you will not be able to cope if you don't read up. I was reading, I had to start ordering maritime history. If you see my library, I was dictionaries, oceanic terminologies. Because I could be in a meeting, they say, all right, I said, now give us a brief. And then I'm using what? Terminologies that belong in the market there. So I had to read. And not only was I reading, I was making sure the guys, I had designated staff in the Marine Environment Management Department, in shipping development. I would summon them, I will invite them. All right, talk to me. As they're talking, even though they're giving me a brief, but the journalist in me was asking questions for my learning and development. That was how I caught up. You must develop a strategy that works for you, that enables you to quickly come up to terms. You must know everything. Those, whether it's the terminologies and the modus operandi. How many of us here have been to the ports? How many of us? 1, 2, 3, not every one of you. You should go and walk at least, even if it's just go there, embed yourself, have a feel, breathe in the air there. See how these all transactions unfold. I am telling you, it will shape the way you put the narrative out. That's why you see journalists, they want to go to places. They want a tour, they want to do a tour, they want an on-the-spot assessment, or just get on the plane, get on that helicopter, see what's going on, because when they then write the stories, they immerse you in it. Please, you are the port economic regulator. You must know what those ports look like. You must see what the freight forwarders are going through. You need to go there, at least have a whiff of it. It will shape a lot of things. It will. That experiential dimension will make it very visceral and to make world of a difference. I talked about your writing skills. Then you must also develop your speaking skills. Very important. You must become a dynamic speaker. Because you can be in a place and they are saying things that may not be directly picking out Shippers Council, but ramification-wise, you know you should weigh in. That's not the time to be silent. That's the time you get up. And I can tell you in 5 minutes of speaking, you can paint the finest picture of your organization into pure brand value in the hearts and minds of people. That's how powerful the art of speaking is. Effective oral communication. You must develop it. Learn it, whatever it is you do. All of you here must be good speakers. You can no longer hide behind your memos. You must. You cannot be in the communication arena and not be able to speak effectively with confidence and explain, boil down what it means to be a shipper. What does it mean? For instance, Nigerian Shippers Council, when I was just really looking at it, I came to the conclusion that the Nigerian port is like, what, Old Trafford. Arsenal versus Man United. And MPA is the referee. That's all. If one party, Arsenal could be the freight forwarders, and Man U could be terminal operator. Oh yeah, lock horns. We do business. So if one person, like in football, you commit a foul, what does the referee do? He blows the whistle. An infringement has occurred. I need to restore balance. That's Nigerian Shippers Council. In analogy terms, you must be able to explain who you are, what you do. So Nigerian Shippers Council, who are we? Oh, what do you guys really do? You start, if it's a speech, think of a football match. We are the referee. Or think of this ecosystem, we are the umpire. But please, your ability to speak very well is very important. Next is your ability to interface with artificial intelligence. The world has changed now. Your ability to interface with artificial intelligence. Now, let me be clear about this. There are people who talk about AI taking our jobs. I like what a young lady said recently online. She said, no, AI will not take anybody's job. It is people that know how to use AI that will take other people's jobs. I was very impressed with that statement. Please, when you are online, don't get too carried away with all the social noises and all the crazy content. Somebody wake up in the morning and because, the way they went to bed, they just begin to post themselves. And before you know it, before noon, it will have over 10,000 views and all that. Scan through all of those. You're going to meet, especially on LinkedIn, where people are really making meaningful contributions, adding meaningful value. You're going to see a lot of that. So, your ability to interface with AI. And the principle behind artificial intelligence is very simple. We, the humans, are the originators. AI is the generator. So, the original ideas coming from us and using AI to generate any additional. We do not abandon our responsibility to AI. Recently, of course, I teach public speaking and I coach quite a number of people, quite a lot of top people, even in the maritime sector. Even after I left, I went back to the school of eloquence. And so there was this day, one of my students, very senior person in one of the agencies, was preparing for a speech. He had to represent his principal. And so they sent me the speech. It was written by the PR unit. Don't worry, it was not NSC. It was written by the PR unit. And I took the speech. As we were practicing and tried to help him prepare, I said, hold on. I then assessed the speech for AI. I realized that 70% of it was written using AI. Now that's an abuse. So practically, there was no input. So AI was no longer being used as a tool. AI was being used or being abused as the staff, as the speechwriter. I kid you not. So that's laziness. And there's no way you'll be able to respond to this larger crisis when we get to communication crisis. If, as a communications person, you're not developing your capacity. If your principal, I believe you write speeches for your, does this department do you do some speech writing as well? This unit, do you do some speech writing? Or sometimes, okay, if they want, okay, PR can do the speech. So part of what you want to do is sit down with the party involved, let them articulate in very clear terms and help them refine from a communication standpoint. Because it's not everything that should be said in the way it is said openly. And that is your duty as gatekeeper, which is one of the functions of media, of communication, of journalism. You're the gatekeepers. People think gatekeeping is only about what we should prevent from coming in. Part of gatekeeping is also what we prevent from getting out. So you can guide. And there are steps, there are procedures for guiding principals or parties, lead parties who are giving speeches. So you can use AI to support the original intent. Understand the principle. We humans are originative. AI is generative. Do not reverse the role. Do not see the original responsibility to AI. It's just maybe you go to ChatGPT or Gemini and say, give me a speech. You can imagine if I had gone to use AI, I would have just been reading from, and then we'll be reading, okay, I have my paper. I would have given you paper now up to 20 pages from AI. But we are still the originals to make the conversations meaningful, productive, and impactful. So AI should be used intentionally towards clearly set goals, used as a tool. So you can't run away from it. There are people who are trying to avoid the use of artificial intelligence. It has come to stay. The same way when Google showed up and we were worried, you mean you just do a search and everything will come out, and we got used to it. I am sure within the next 1 or 2 years, we'll all be using these tools to provide us the necessary support. We as communicators must be leading the charge on the cutting edge of the use of these tools. Then the next skill that we must develop has got to be our interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills will serve our ability to cut across departments and understand what is going on rather than always waiting. Interpersonal skills is purely relational capability. Why? Because you guide how you prepare materials and to give you a good head start. Please, PR unit, do not operate in your own echo chamber. Go across the directorates have friends, colleagues, interface regularly so that you can constantly have a good feel of real issues going on, not rumor-driven content within the organization. You know what I'm talking about. There are things we all get to know almost immediately.